Hi guys, so last night I watched Creatures the World Forgot, the fourth and final of Hammer's fantasy films, and the only one that I'd seen previously. I saw this back in the 90s when it came on British TV. The other three I only saw for the first time quite recently, like in the last year or so, but this one I saw when I was a teenager and it made a massive impression on me at the time, so much so that when I became an adult in the noughties and the DVD era came along, I tried to find this film and I failed because I couldn't remember the title of it. There were many times throughout that decade and the decade after where I would go on Google and type in things like prehistoric film, caveman film, and I was thinking, come on, someone help me here, and I just couldn't find the movie. And it's only by pure luck, quite recently, that I was looking through Hammer's filmography and stumbled across it while I've been doing this review series. But I've seen it now, after all these years, for the second time, and I'm pleased to say that it does stand up in terms of being as good as I remembered. It's not as epic as I remembered. I remembered this being like a 2-hour film, 2.5 hours. But I think the reason I thought that is because the story of this film spans like 2 or 3 generations of a tribe. So we cover like 30 or 40 years of history in this one 90-minute movie, and whenever a movie does that, I think psychologically the runtime does feel longer for the viewer somehow. So to give you more of an idea of the story of this, we follow a tribe who are living on like a rocky outcrop in the middle of this really inhospitable area, but food and water is hard to come by. They've got to move on. And so they go on this really long journey through all these different environments, and eventually at the end of the film arrive in like a countryside type area with trees. And the implication is that yes, humans can settle down here, you know. Along the way, they come across other tribes and various dangers. They come across animals, but irony over ironies, the biggest villain in the film is from within, the enemy within, and we finish the film with like a brother-on-brother mini war of sorts. The film was directed by Don Chaffey, a brilliant person to choose because he did the first of this series of films. He did 1 Million Years BC, that film with Raquel Welch, high-quality film that, and so this guy knew what he was doing with this type of film, and he's made another really great film here with this one. I don't have too much to say about the actors because I didn't recognise any of the names in this or faces, but they all do a pretty good job with the roles that they've been given. The only person of note who's in this is a woman called Julie Egger. Now, I didn't recognise the name at first, but when I looked in her filmography, I discovered that she was one of the Blofeld's girls from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. It seems to be a thing in recent years that I just keep coming across the actresses who were in that group of Blofeld's girls, but in other movies. And it's going to get to the point soon where I reckon I would have seen all of those 12 girls in various other movies. I'll have to sort of get on the cast list of that particular Bond film and see how close I am to completing the set. But Julie Egger is in this. I don't know how to pronounce her surname. I don't know if I'm saying it right. She's Norwegian, but her surname is pronounced E-G-E. So for me, I guess the natural way of saying it would be Egger or Eggy, although that would be a very unfortunate surname. Egg? I'm just not sure, but it doesn't matter, of course. I'm not sure if she speaks in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. She definitely doesn't speak in this film because this entire film is grunts. There's no language. You know, characters are just saying to each other things like, you know, it's like that all the way through the film. It might be off-putting in the first 10 or 15 minutes if you've never seen a film like this before, but certainly very, very quickly you'll get used to it, and it absolutely will not bother you at all. I think it was a sensible choice to take this braver approach with the dialogue, you know, rather than just letting the characters speak, but in caveman times, you know. Can you imagine the 1960s Hammer actors saying things like, I think we're in danger of running out of food, old chap. I think we should try and head that way towards warmer climates. What say you? It wouldn't have been that stupid, but yeah, it's a film full of grunts, but it absolutely 100% works. The film is sort of split into 2 halves. So the first half, which is when we get most of the time jumping, it's kind of like a series of snapshots of life back in those times, and we get to see all the random bad things that could just happen on a day-by-day basis. So we'll suddenly witness things like death by childbirth, or an earthquake where people will suddenly fall into the cracks, or a random hunting expedition, which will end with a goat coming out of nowhere and just goring somebody to death. You know, it's just one bit of bad luck after the other, but it's compelling to watch. You can't take your eyes off it. And then second half, we settle down into something resembling an actual story. You know, this idea of two brothers going at it. But both halves of the film are equally good for me. It's not like one half is the stronger half. The whole film from start to finish is just really, really good. Actually, I take that back. The actual start does take a little bit of time to get going. The first 5 or 10 minutes, it just seems to be an endless landscape of credits and still images and like, come on, get to the damn movie. But that's just a little characteristic of what older films were like, I suppose. Going back to Julie Egg, I don't think her character makes quite the impression that she was meant to. She's meant to be like the pin-up girl of the movie, in the same way that Raquel Welch was in 1 Billion Years BC and whoever that girl was in When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth. But she doesn't fare as well as those other characters, mainly because she doesn't come into this until about the halfway point because of all the time jumping, and she doesn't do an awful lot aside from almost get raped twice, and she's a damsel in distress towards the end. Raquel Welch was much better in her film, although I say that despite knowing full well that Raquel Welch herself doesn't turn up in 1 Billion Years BC for quite a bit of the runtime, but it just feels like she does somehow. But there's not that many negatives in this. The main villain is kind of weird. I'm just dumbfounded by the decisions he makes in this. He just seems unusually, very unnaturally obsessed with bringing his brother down, even after he's already been slapped down several times. I just don't get why he insists on killing his brother. And he seems to have real trouble getting a woman at any point during his life, which is slightly strange because he seems to operate at a high level of the clan, and he's not a bad-looking guy at all. He seems quite good-looking. He sort of resembles a Stone Age Keanu Reeves for me, just because of the droopy face and the slight curtains. I was reminded of Keanu quite a few times throughout this film. Who wouldn't want to see Keanu in a film like this, by the way? I know I would. There are a couple of really bizarre scenes in this that I simply don't get, and I guess this is the downfall of having a film entirely without dialogue. I'll describe the scenes I'm on about, and if you can help me out in the comments, I'd really appreciate it. So there's this one moment where the old crone character, that's how they describe her in the audio commentary, she starts whacking these two blonde girls with a tree branch. The girls are tied down, so they can't do anything about this. And I think it's meant to be a punishment, but I'm not sure. I think one of the girls, she's been caught with a boy that she shouldn't have been with near this giant rock. But that doesn't explain why the other girl is being punished in the same scenes. I just don't fully understand it. Now, the boy and his girl, they hook up with each other again in the middle of the night when everyone else is asleep, and they try and escape the tribe. Nobody goes after them, and yet in the morning, we discover their bodies hanging from like another huge rock, and I don't get how that happened. Is this like some kind of supernatural magic done by the crone? Incidentally, staying with the crone just for a moment, she gets an understudy of sorts during this film, who is the mute twin sister of the main two brothers, and I found this particular woman a much more interesting character than the Julie Egger character. I just wanted to throw that in there quickly. But moving on to another bizarre scene, there's a moment where a woman ends up stranded at the bottom of a sand dune, a huge sand dune, and she can't get back up because it's too slippy, and the rest of the tribe just moves on without her. Now, the implication is that this woman is dead, she's stranded at the bottom of this thing, she's got no water, but I don't get why she can't just sort of go sideways. There's like a flatter area she could go down, and then she could meet back up with the tribe at a later point just by following the same sort of general direction. She doesn't have to go straight back up the steep part of the dune. If you've seen the film, you'll sort of know what I'm going on about here, but it's a little bit strange. There are some other good moments that I do get, but they're just so weird and bizarre. So there's a fight with a bear in a cave, but the bear is not stop motion. It's actually a guy in a bear suit, and it's absolutely hilarious. At one point, one of the cavemen gets on the back of the bear and tries to strangle the bear to death. You can't do that to a bear. The whole scene is just completely ridiculous, and yet I thoroughly enjoyed it. You couldn't get away with doing something like that in films these days. The audience would expect CGI, but for 1971, it's fine. I just love the scene. And I've saved the weirdest for last because about 10 minutes from the end, the main villains group gets ambushed by a weird group of marauders with masks and face paint, and the look of these people is just so off the charts bizarre. They genuinely look like extras from a Daft Punk video or something. Like, I just expect them at any moment to get up and start going around the world. Like, what a strange thing to throw at us with about 10 minutes of the movie left. And these people, they want to poke the eyes out of their enemies, not just kill them. I don't get that. Maybe they just want to be cruel for cruel's sake. But yeah, this film has got all sorts of interesting stuff in it, from the weird to the downright bizarre. But I did thoroughly enjoy it, and I'm really happy to have been reacquainted with it after all these decades. So we've reached that point where I'll show you the version of the film that I've got, and I've got an absolutely crackerjack version of Creatures the World Forgot. It's by Indicator, it's a special edition, and it's fantastic. There's so much in here. Start with the features. There's an audio commentary track by filmmaker Sean Hogan and Kim Newman, who has done so many audio tracks over time. There's a documentary about the film, 25 minutes. There's also a 26-minute documentary about the score, and I'm not going to read out all of them because there's so many on here. There's some short films from the 50s. I don't know what connection they have to the main movie, but there's a lot. I mean, just look at how long the list is. And there's also some postcards of Julie Egger in this version. I don't know what I'm going to do with those. They'll just sit in the box. Best of all, there is a booklet for this movie, 80 pages. I'm planning to read that this weekend. I'm going to leave it out in the living room so I can go through this. I'm really looking forward to checking this out. Absolutely fantastic. So this is a cracking edition of the film, and it only cost me £20 brand new. I think that's pretty good for a version with this much stuff in it. Right, we'll leave it there and we'll get to the bag of terror and see how I'm going to score this. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bloody axes out of 5. I almost went to 4.5, but whatever. It's an excellent film, and I'm really pleased I managed to find it again after all these years and enjoy it and add it to my collection. So there we have it. We've now covered all 4 of Hammer's fantasy films on the channel, and it's hard to pick a winner between 1 million or 1 billion years BC, when dinosaurs ruled the earth, and this one. All 3 excellent movies. The only film I'm quite sure doesn't belong in the conversation is the disappointing Prehistoric Women. So we will move on from this fantasy side of Hammer and concentrate on finishing off their horror movies that I've still not covered. I'm not entirely sure what the next one I will be. It'll be something from that late Hammer era, early to mid 70s. We'll see, but that's for another day. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.